If you're raising money for your startup and you don't have a data room, or worse, you have one and it's a mess, you're making the fundraising process a lot harder for yourself. As a startup lawyer who's been a part of hundreds of venture capital raises, I've seen deals slow down and even fall apart because founders didn't have their documents organized when it was time for due diligence. So in this video, I'm going to break down what a data room is in the first place, why investors and their lawyers care about it so much, and then I'm going to show you exactly how to build one from scratch, folder by folder, so you're confident when an investor asks for it. Let's get straight into it. What a data room is. So a data room is where you store all of your company's legal, financial, and operational documents for investors to review during the fundraising process. When an investor is considering putting money into your company, they're going to do due diligence. Due diligence is the process where the investor and their lawyers dig through every aspect of your business before they commit to writing you a check. So your data room is where all of that information lives, is organized, and ready for them to access. And the reason you need to set this up properly is because due diligence is where deals either move forward or fall apart. If the investor's lawyer can find what they need quickly and everything looks clean, the deal moves fast. If they can't, the deal slows down, and that's when problems come up. And this is something I've seen play out firsthand. When I represent a founder and the investor sends over a term sheet that looks like it was drafted by ChatGPT, I tell my client that investor might not be legit. The investor's lawyer does the same exact thing in reverse. If your data room looks like a mess and your documents look sloppy, their lawyer is going to tell them to dig deeper or walk away. Because to them, a disorganized data room signals a disorganized company. So a buttoned up data room actually helps you close your deal faster and increases your probability of getting the investment. Now, on the flip side, if your data room doesn't exist at all, that's an even bigger problem because the investor is still going to ask for everything, whether you have it organized or not. And if you're trying to put documents together in the middle of a live fundraise, you're going to slow down the entire process. That gives the investor time to lose interest, find another deal, or start questioning how organized your company actually is. I worked with a founder once who thought they could handle their own legal documents. They had messed things up without even knowing it. They changed entities, but didn't do it correctly, and they tried to respond to the investor's due diligence request lists themselves. The lawyer for the investor actually straight up asked the founder to stop trying to do things themselves and asked the founder to speak with their lawyer. The founder found me at the 11th hour in the deal as investors counsel was getting seriously concerned about the state of due diligence. When I spoke with investors counsel, they definitely let me know how concerned they were and labeled it as one of the worst data rooms they'd ever seen. That deal was on the rocks when I found it, but I cleaned up the data room and was able to get the deal across the finish line. How to set up your data room. Now that you know what a data room is and what it signals to investors, let's talk about actually building one. In terms of timing, you want to start putting this together before you're actively fundraising. Because if you wait until an investor asks for documents, you're already behind. The best approach is to treat your data room as a living document that you build and update over time. Even if you're early and don't have much yet, getting the structure in place now will allow you to not have to rush putting things together later. And for the setup itself, you don't need anything fancy. A Google Drive with clearly labeled folders works perfectly fine. You don't need to pay for expensive virtual data room software at this stage. Just make sure you set the permissions to read only so that investors can view everything but can't edit or delete anything. So the folder structure is really what matters here. You want 9 clearly labeled folders, each one covering a different part of your business. Company docs, financials, marketing, IP, market research, sales, staff, tech, and FAQ. I'm going to go through each one so you know exactly what goes in them and why investors actually care about each one. And by the way, if you're getting ready to raise and you want to make sure your legal documents and data room are actually investor ready before you start having conversations, click the first link in the description to book a free consultation with me. We'll go through your specific situation and make sure everything is in order so you're prepared. Now let me keep going. Folder by folder breakdown. So the first folder is company docs, and this is the foundation of your entire data room. This folder includes your articles of incorporation, any investor rights agreements and co-sale agreements from previous rounds, your stock purchase agreements, IP assignments, board resolutions, and your cap table along with any details on previous raises. Your cap table shows who owns what percentage of the company, and if you've raised before, the investor is going to want to see the documents from those rounds. This folder is important because it's the first thing the investor's lawyer is going to look at. So if your incorporation documents are missing or your cap table doesn't add up, that's a red flag that can slow or end the conversation before it even gets started. And one important thing to keep in mind here is any handshake promises of equity that aren't documented on your cap table. If you've promised equity to anyone verbally, you need to get that documented and included because the investor is going to ask, and if it comes out during due diligence that there are undocumented equity commitments, that makes you look unprepared. From there, the second folder is financials. This is where your profit and loss statements go, along with your pro forma statements, financial models, and projections. Investors want to see how your money has been managed and where you think the business is headed financially. And if your projections are unrealistic, like you're saying you're going to make $100 million in your first year, investors will see right through that. The third folder is marketing, which includes your one-pager, your pitch deck, and your branding guidelines and vision. Your pitch deck is going to be the first thing investors see before they even get to the data room, so it needs to be polished. After that is IP, which stands for intellectual property, and this includes any granted and filed patents, your trademarks, and your overall IP strategy. This folder matters a lot because if the company doesn't legally own its intellectual property, what is the investor even investing in? I've seen acquisitions fall apart because an early employee never signed an IP assignment, so make sure that anyone who has ever contributed to your product, whether that's a founder, employee, contractor, or consultant, has signed an IP assignment agreement. Those IP assignments should live in your company docs folder though, but the patents, trademarks, and strategy go in the IP folder. The fifth folder is market research. This includes your market studies, competitive analysis with features and pricing comparisons, and a document explaining your why now thesis. Your why now thesis speaks to why your idea is ready to succeed now. The problem with startups is sometimes they're too early. Timing is a big piece of success in business. Before DoorDash, there were other food delivery companies. DoorDash was able to get to the scale it has because it nailed both timing and the founder was the right person who put together the right team to grow it to the scale that venture capitalists are looking for. So you have to explain your why now thesis. Why is it the perfect time for your startups to succeed? Then you have sales, which includes documentation of your sales process and your sales pipeline. At the early stage, you might not have a massive pipeline, and that's okay, but investors want to see that you have a repeatable process for acquiring customers and that you're tracking where your leads and opportunities are. The seventh folder is staff. This is where you list your current employees with their titles and salaries, your employee agreements, any future critical roles and hires you're planning, and a list of contract workers and firms you're currently using. Investors care about this because the team is one of the biggest factors in their investment decision. They want to know who's on the team, how much you're paying them, and whether the compensation is reasonable for your stage. So if you're paying a CTO $500,000 a year and you've only raised $2 million, that's going to raise questions. From there, the eighth folder is tech, and this includes your system architecture, diagram, API documentation, your product release map or roadmap, and screenshots of the existing product. This gives the investor a clear picture of what the product actually looks like and how it's built. And the ninth and final folder is frequently asked questions, which is where you put answers to commonly asked questions about your business. This might seem small, but it's actually a really smart move because investors tend to ask similar questions across different deals. So they'll also ask, what jurisdictions other than Delaware is the business qualified to do business in, or does it do business in, or does it own, lease, or license property? So if you're in California, for example, you'll need to file a foreign qualification for California or wherever you are if you haven't already. They'll also ask about any litigation against the company to make sure there are no lawsuits. Then they'll also ask whether the founders or any employees have a criminal record of any sort. And they'll also ask if your entity has any previous entities and for the contracts and records of any previous entities that may have existed as prior predecessors to the current entity. So if you're a startup founder who's getting ready to raise and you want to make sure your data room and your legal documents are investor ready before you start talking to investors, click the first link in the description and book a free consultation with me. We'll go through your specific situation, identify anything that needs to be cleaned up, and make sure you're fully prepared so that when an investor asks for your data room, you're ready to go that same day. So again, click the first link below this video to book your free consultation. And if you want to learn exactly what investors are looking for when evaluating your startup, then check out this video next.